Welcome, one and all, to the Off the Mic Wrestling Show here on YouTube by Mike Mayer. Appreciate you all tuning in to the AEW Dynamite review, August 7th edition here. We're 18 days away from All In London at Wembley Stadium, and this show did not feel like a show less than 3 weeks away from the biggest show of the year. And it goes back to one of my biggest criticisms of AEW. They don't evolve. They don't really change. They stick to what they think works, and it hasn't worked. And that's why they're gradually losing their audience. And this is one of those cases where it's like, okay, match started off hot with a good match, but you're really catering to a small niche audience. So I like this first match, but like again, it goes back to MJF as a character really has not evolved very much. He's gone back to a lot of the same heel shtick that he did before, with a very American undertone, kind of borderline MAGA gimmick that he's got going on. He poses for the flag during his entrance, like a flag drops from the ceiling. So Don Callis is out for this match. This is the eliminator match between MJF and Kyle Fletcher. Kyle Fletcher looked good in this match. So early on, bell rings. MJF rolls out to the ring, grabs the mic, basically tells Fletcher to lock up like a man, and he threatened to leave if he didn't do so. MJF returns to the ring and kicked Fletcher rather than lock up with him, going for the heel stuff. So this was a good match, and for a lot of it, it really became very formulaic and like almost every MJF match that I have seen in the last 5 years. Like it's so you get Fletcher going for a kick, MJF poked his eye, Fletcher then super kicks MJF, who comes right back with a destroyer, and then Fletcher rolls out of it and hits a clothesline. So we're no selling destroyers here, and it's just like, guys, you got to make these moves actually matter. Like, rather than making these guys look like indestructible maniacs. It's like, it's very indie-rific. It's like some of this stuff got over in the old black and gold NXT, and it's gotten over in the early stages of AEW. When you continue to keep doing this in every single random match, because I like Kyle Fletcher at 25 years old. He's the future, absolutely. Here's the problem. Kyle Fletcher has won next to no matches this year on AEW television, including he's lost to Will Ospreay, he's lost to a lot of people, he's taken a lot of pinfalls, and you're going up against the then internet, now American champion in a head-to-head match, just blow for blow. I'm not saying that MJF should squash Kyle Fletcher, but he should defeat him, and it shouldn't be coming to like these lengths. So MJF later on in the match goes for a tombstone pile driver. Fletcher avoids. MJF then goes for the Panama Sunrise, but Fletcher's able to sit down on him as he's going for it for a 2 count. Fletcher then hits his inverted pile driver for a 2. Don Callis walks to ringside from commentary after he was there, tosses the damn screwdriver. We've got to stop. Again, no evolution. We've seen this. I've seen this match with Don Callis. I've seen this match with MJF. So Callis is distracting the referee. Kyle Fletcher debates using the screwdriver, throws it aside, but MJF gives him a low blow. He hits him with the kangaroo kick. Okay, I thought we weren't doing the kangaroo kick anymore. So he uses the kangaroo kick, hits his brainbuster finish, and MJF wins this match over Kyle Fletcher in about 17 and a half minutes. This was fine for what it was, but I feel like I've seen it before. And it's just like, again, if you're trying to evolve as a company, you've got to start taking more swings. I'll give that 1 hour match with MJF and Ospreay this. At least they tried something different there that we hadn't seen before. I mean, MJF is still the same guy, but at least they tried, hey, let's do a whole sprint of a match in 1 hour. Now, granted, I hated the finish of that match, but still, like, this was good. But again, I feel like I've seen it before. Somewhere down along the line of this match, and maybe it was shown early in the show. I can't remember. Like I said, I'm keeping track of so many things. Will Ospreay was barricaded in his dressing room, so MJF actually hits Paul Turner with the title belt. MJF loads up his Dynamite Diamond ring, hits Fletcher with it. MJ keeps punching Fletcher, who's now bleeding from the forehead. MJF looked into the camera, said he was going to do what Ospreay didn't have the balls to do. MJF then goes for the Tiger Driver. Okay. But Ospreay is able to run out before MJF can do the move. Ospreay is hugging his friend. They're tending to him. The trainer and Callis are in the ring. The trainer checks on checks on Fletcher while Callis is asking where the hell has Ospreay been. So I guess Don didn't know that he was barricaded up in his locker room. So all in all, this is a good angle. Again, what I am worrying about with where this is going is that MJF might keep this championship past All In, which would be terrible, terrible if that happens. The only acceptable finish to that match at Wembley Stadium is Tiger Driver, Hidden Blade, 1, 2, 3. That is the only acceptable finish, to have Will Ospreay in his home country of England in a match for the American Championship, which was the International Championship. And considering that Will Ospreay, you're trying to build him up as this top star in your company, he should get the win here. But I'm really concerned that Don Callis and possibly Kyle Fletcher is going to screw Will Ospreay out of this match. I hope that's not the case, and I hope whatever Don has brewing coming out of this is going to be whoever challenges Will Ospreay first for that championship when I think he should win. So a little bit of concern there, but this was good. Probably one of the best bits on the entire show, and yeah. But again, I think the big issue I have is like I feel like I've seen this match before with the screwdrivers and the kicking out of and the tombstone pile drivers and all this and the Canadian destroyers that get rolled through. I feel like I've seen this stuff before. And again, no, not to knock Kyle Fletcher, he has not done anything remotely worth anything to warrant an eliminator match, other than the fact that he is tied to Will Ospreay, and that's really it. So again, I don't think this needed to have the eliminator stipulation attached to it. Could have just been a grudge match. Kyle Fletcher fighting for his friend, but I guess every non-title match has to be an eliminator match according to Tony Khan. All right, so we get a Bryan Danielson, Jeff Jarrett video package hyping up their Anything Goes match for later in the night. Ricky Steamboat going to be a special guest commentator. They're kind of pulling out all the stops for Bryan near the end. Mariah May then out for her match against Viva Van, an independent wrestler who I've seen a couple times before. She's all right. But let's set the stage for this. This match was announced at about 10 Eastern time on Twitter yesterday. And I'm like, why? Why does Mariah May need to be wrestling when she's already got her championship match against Toni Storm at Wembley Stadium? It's got a ton of heat behind it. It's one of the best women's feuds. It's honestly one of the best stories AEW has told in its entire 5-year history. It's been really well done. You don't need to have your wrestlers go up against people like, I mean, Viva Van's an experienced person. It's not like she faced some jobber a couple weeks ago like she did, or an enhancement talent, but this was a nothing match. This was just there. Mariah May got her running knee strike in. She hit the Mayday, but then doesn't do the count, follows up with a Storm 0 for 3, and that's the match. The match was over in like 6 minutes. It's like, okay, did we really need that? Especially after what the post-match angle was. And so a crew member gives Mariah May a gift wrap poster board of Toni Storm hugging Mariah May, Toni Storm hugging her, and the back of the poster actually reads, "Die, Mariah, die." Toni Storm shows up and attacks Mariah May. Storm wanted to hit her with the heel, but several referees and a couple security guards are able to get in. It was a pull apart, and Storm holds up the sign after Mariah's out of the ring, "Die, Mariah, die." I like the heat behind this, and I like what they've been doing with all these run-ins and stuff, but you've had Toni Storm wrestle a couple times. Since she came back, I felt they rushed her back too soon. Mariah May didn't need to be in this match 18 days before her match at Wembley Stadium. I just like, yeah, I understand that maybe you need some wrestling to enhance things, but it's just like, this felt like, especially with the way the angle happened after, and I get it, their whole tagline is "We're the best wrestle." You didn't need to have this match, and especially when you announce it at 10 o'clock Eastern the night before your show, that shows you're just throwing shit at the wall and hoping that it sticks. Like I said, okay, 6 minutes, but it's like it was fine. It was just there. Then this was an interesting point of the show, depending on where you were watching this. So, video package for Jack Perry. He's watching footage of of Darby Allin setting him on fire at Anarchy in the Arena, and then threatening to set him on fire during the Blood and Guts match. And somewhere along the line during this, and I had to go back and rewatch this on Twitter because AEW reposted it, they went to commercial, and some people got a Taco Bell commercial in the middle of this. So I went back and watched this. So Jack Perry's basically just saying all these fake tough guy words. Everything in life has a price, but the question is, how much are you willing to sacrifice for it? This was hot ass. This was just a wet fart of a promo, and no wonder that they went to commercial early. This sucked. I like Jungle Boy, and he was a believable babyface. This phase of Jack Perry as this fake tough guy coming out of the CM Punk stuff, it ain't working. Ryan Satin, who's a former wrestling reporter, he did stuff with WWE, created Pro Wrestling Sheet. He put an interesting tweet out. Like, what has that initial angle of attacking Tony Khan had played any role in what has happened in the last, I don't know, 3-4 months since it happened? You had a Anarchy in the Arena match that was kind of set up where Tony Khan got involved, and it led to Jack Perry getting lit on fire. But then you had the Blood and Guts match that was just thrown together. There really was no defense of Tony Khan at all in this. And it's like we kind of just went back to normal. The Young Bucks are barely on camera anymore. They don't defend their championships. Okada's comic relief, and Jack Perry's a fake tough guy. So it's not doing anything for me. And it's like, yeah, you're getting two of the four pillars of AEW in this positive match at Wembley, and Darby's going to put his body on the line, try to kill himself, and Jack is probably going to do the same. And this should be a fine match at Wembley, but it's like, it's just there. Like the build and the stuff behind, the heat behind this with what should be a really tense angle with the Elite trying to take over AEW, it's just not been there. They attacked Kenny Omega, and that's where this thing really peaked. So, so Darby Allin then responds to it, says people have asked him, why didn't he just set Jack Perry on fire and just be done with it? He said Allin said it was simple. Then Jack would just make an excuse and not show up at All In. Allin listed the upcoming shows and said that Perry didn't have to show up for them, but that he has to show up at Wembley. So there you go. Again, like I said, I like Darby Allin. I think he's gone a little bit too far in some of his matches this year. The Sting match, the glass spot was ridiculous. Lighting somebody on fire was ridiculous, and then threatening to do it again was even more insane. So then we get, we get Katsuyori Shibata versus Brian Keith, and God forbid we have to have Chris Jericho TV time every single week. He kicks Cat Taz off commentary, so he's shouting on commentary during this entire match. Another thing Ryan Satin pointed out, and I like Ryan's actually really good at he was really good at what he does, and now he's just a fan, which is like, it's nice that you can actually be a fan and just enjoy this after covering, as Gunther would say, this great sport normally. But yeah, this like, listen, you've got Jericho said he broke his pinky during his match with Minoru Suzuki and said Dave Meltzer still gave the match 4 stars. I can tell you that match sucked. That match really freaking sucked. So yeah, I mean, this was just there, man. Like, it's just, you don't need to keep Chris Jericho on television. And what Ryan said, and getting back to what Ryan Satin was saying, he's like saying, none of these Jericho stables are doing what their intent is, or at least what Jericho thinks they're supposed to do in elevating new talent. Inner Circle did that. Inner Circle absolutely did that for Sammy Guevara. Whether you love him or you hate him, he got elevated to a different level. Santana and Ortiz were really well thought of. And Jake Hager had some moments, but he doesn't really have any aura behind him. Like, we all knew that from his time in WWE as Jack Swagger. But you get to the Jericho Appreciation Society, and like, yeah, Daniel Garcia's kind of been finally beefed up, but that's after he distanced himself from Jericho. Matt Menard's his lackey. Angelo Parker's off TV. He's getting ready to have a baby with Ruby Soho. Anna Jay's no better. I mean, Sammy Guevara ended up being back in there. It's just like, Jericho Appreciation Society didn't do anything. And now the Learning Tree, this is easily the worst thing that Chris Jericho's done in his career. Easily. It's self-indulgent. It's just totally pretentious. And I understand that in Jericho's mind, he's like, okay, I'm playing into the internet and I'm trying to get heat. You're getting go away heat. That's not the right heat you want to get. And every time that Chris Jericho comes out, granted, Spotlight, his music that he comes out to is actually kind of a low key banger. They got rid of Judas, which was a great thing about him. But hey, they gave him a good song, another Fozzy song. But yeah, this was just there. I like Shibata, but Shibata gets hit with a head, but then tripped Keith and planted him face first. Shibata gets a big chop and puts Keith in a claw hold. Shibata took Keith down and puts him in a cross arm breaker submission, and Brian Keith immediately taps out. So Shibata beats Brian Keith. After the match was really where it got interesting. Fans wanted Hook. Big Bill and Jericho rush the ring. They're beating down Shibata, and out comes Hook. He's back with a patch over his eye to sell the fireball attack from a few weeks ago. Hook's back. Hopefully this leads to Hook beating Chris Jericho at Wembley, and we can just end this learning tree nonsense. Hopefully at some point Samoa Joe comes back. I know he's got his TV show, and he's got some other commitments that he's got to do. I think it's a series on Peacock that he's doing, which is great for Joe that he's getting a lot of acting gigs because Joe's just great at everything. Give that man the world. But yeah, this match was there. We need to stop having Chris Jericho stuff. It's the FTW championship, for God's sake. It's like not even a recognized championship. And it's just like, I hope that Hook comes out of this better, but nobody, not even Ricky Starks, could come out of a Chris Jericho feud with anything. Adam Cole, like really, his like tenure in AEW started to sink when he associated himself with Chris Jericho in just a really just boring match at Double or Nothing last year. So then we get Orange Cassidy getting interviewed by Renee Paquette. I guess on commentary they announced, okay, since the Beast Mortos, Roderick Strong, and Roosh beat the Conglomeration last week, the Conglomeration wanted a rematch because there's been some real life travel issues getting to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the site of the event. Orange Cassidy basically said, yeah, he'll go through a scheduled match against them. He found a couple local boys who were looking for a fight. And Renee saying, yeah, let me know if you need anything else. Cass said, yeah, would you wrestle for him? And she said no. And then Orange just said bye. Orange it's fun. I just think they need to tone it back in terms of it. Like sometimes I think what got Orange over also got him cooled off is like he wrestled way too much. He was a very good champion, but it just became to the point where it's just like it was almost like a thing that came on, and you just expected you know what you were going to see, the same match, making the babyface come back, and it just kept, like I said, with a lot of AEW, just got really redundant. So then Hangman Page gets an interview with Renee. Renee brings up the loss to Darby Allin last week and says, since you came back, you haven't gotten the results that you wanted. Page said that there's one man he wants, but there's been a bunch of dumbasses getting in his way. Page said he would get what he wants. Notice he did not say Swerve Strickland's name. We know who he's talking about, but he didn't give Swerve the satisfaction of getting his name mentioned on television. That was a neat little detail. I'm curious to see what Hangman does in this stretch leading into Wembley. Because, again, in terms of like building feuds and building stuff up, that Hangman Swerve thing was just right there, and everybody wanted it. And not to disrespect Bryan Danielson, it's just like it feels like they're kind of just, not backtracking, but they're really trying to speed up the process because they lost 2 weeks with like a lot of the build in the 1 hour match with MJF and Ospreay. So, and they had a built-in story if that's the way you were gonna go. So, oh well. So then we get Jim Ross's sit-down interview with Swerve Strickland. God bless JR. I think he is a treasure. The man's one of the greatest voices in all of professional wrestling. He should not have done this interview. With all due respect to him, he's been through enough health issues in his life. He did not look in good health at that point. He looked like he was really struggling through this segment with Swerve. Swerve did a good job of interacting with JR during this whole thing, but the JR's condition was almost borderline distracting to the whole situation. And if you're Tony Khan, you can't be putting like people in those situations. And I'm sure JR will defend himself and say that he was fine, but it didn't come off great on television. And I'm not trying to knock on somebody's health, but it's just like at a certain level you've got to like, know a limit of someplace. And I understand like you're trying to push, hey, Hall of Fame voice of wrestling interviews your world champion. Okay, but again, JR has been through enough in his life that you don't need to subject him and putting him into television segments just for the sake of it or have him call matches. His legacy is already defined. You don't need to do this. And it almost kind of felt a little bit cheap, to be honest with you. And I don't know the circumstances of it, but like I said, that was a problem for me. So Swerve spoke of opening last year's All In to headline. So he talked about being on All In in a tag match, in a coffin match, or casket match. I don't know what they called it. And he goes from that to headlining this year's show. Jim Ross asked Swerve if he had any remorse of the controversial things he's done. Swerve said, if you knock on the door long enough and they don't let you in, you have to make noise and then people will finally listen. Swerve speaks about how physical the match with Bryan Danielson will be. Jim Ross mentions that Bryan's been talking about how this will be it for him, win, lose, or draw. Swerve said if situations were reversed, would Danielson or anyone else care that he would be on his way out? Swerve said they shouldn't, and neither will he. The big line really that was delivered at the end of this promo, Swerve starts, Ross said he thinks this will be the toughest match that Swerve has, and Swerve questions why, then asked what will happen to Bryan when Bryan's Danielson's body gives out on him. Ross asked if Swerve can beat Danielson. Swerve said he can and he will. And he said Danielson's legacy will belong to him after All In. This was a great promo, great stuff from Swerve. He has not been presented fairly well as a champion, but really since that Ospreay match, it's really kind of been a turning point for him in terms of how he's been presented. He feels like a much bigger deal than he did early on. And maybe that's a result of the Elite kind of taking a back seat. So maybe in that respect, I'm okay with some of the Elite stuff. But again, you set up this huge angle, and it's not been paid off. So then we get to Orange Cassidy and his tag. He comes out to Jane. I may be in the minority of this. I think Jane by Jefferson Starship is one of the best wrestling themes in the business. A lot of people seem to disagree with me and think the Pixie song is the better song. But I guess Tony Khan just plays roulette and says, "Oh, what song is he coming out to?" And I guess they landed on Jane. And then Orange Cassidy reveals his tag team partners to be North Carolina's very own FTR, which is great. So Matt Taven and Mike Bennett are accompanying the heels during this match. They jump the barricade and watch from the front row. Don Callis, second time of the night, is out for the match. Going through like a lot of the I'm going to kind of skim through some of the highlights here. So one thing that was announced in the middle of this match, Excalibur announces that there will be a casino gauntlet match for a world title shot at All In. It'll be on All In, so it's a casino gauntlet match for a future world title shot at All In. Okay, so we've done this match now 3 times in the last 4 months. It's kind of a thrown together, messed up kind of clusterfuck of a situation where basically you just have guys show up and the match can just end whenever. All right. And didn't Darby Allin just win the next world title shot? So is Tony Khan just getting lazy to the point where he has to book 2 title shots in advance? What's going on? Like Darby's got the next one at Grand Slam. So how's that going to work out? That just didn't. I don't know what's going on. Beast Mortos is a lot of fun. Mortos takes out Taven and Bennett inadvertently with a dive. Roosh goes for his finisher on Harwood, the Bull's Horns. Cassidy hits him with an orange punch. Roosh sold it for a second and then dropped Cassidy, and then he dropped Cassidy with a punch. FTR then hit Roosh with the Shatter Machine. And Harwood gets the pin on Roosh. My big takeaway near the closing sequence of this match, the referee had absolutely no control over this match. 0 whatsoever. There was just guys running in and out, no attempt to get them out of the ring, just letting shit happen. and this happens regularly in these like, multi-man matches. It's just like at some point you have to have some level of decorum and respect for the rules. Sometimes this happens a lot in wrestling, but I feel like on AEW television, a lot of stuff you get away with, and it's just like, okay. After the match, Max Caster and Anthony Bowens come out. Caster's mic doesn't work. Harwood says he respects Caster and Bowens for what they've done in AEW, but this goes beyond AEW. Security comes out to like prevent a fight between them and the Acclaim. Harwood says he's not as good on the mic as the Acclaim, but he told them to break through the wall and fight, and we get another pull-apart brawl. Second of the night. Okay. We've had 2 pull-apart brawls, 2 of the same type of segments on the show. Post-match pull-aparts. Original. Then we get a Patriarchy promo. They show the footage of Collision, where the Patriarchy gets confronted by the House of Black and Bullet Club Gold. They're the Bang Bang Gang. So Cage spoke about both teams wanting to face them for the AEW's Trios titles. Said he made some calls and got the match booked for House of Black versus the Bang Bang Gang in a match on Collision to determine the number 1 contenders. He said the winners will face the Patriarchy at All In, and also Christian revealed that he will be the special referee for this match. Gee, I wonder where they got that idea from. WWE just did one of the best special referee matches. Of course, I think this might be a triple threat trios match, just based off the way they're going. And Christian being a heel, he's not going to want to count it. I think we kind of see where this is going. And again, I love Christian. I think he's one of the most underappreciated superstars of his generation. This shtick with the Patriarchy is starting to wear thin. You can only take this father figure gimmick so far, especially when really your source of content is dead dad jokes and talking down to your big giant. And like I said, what has really changed about Christian since last All In when he teamed with Swerve? What's changed? He added the Wayne family. That's it. And Luchasaurus changed his name to Killswitch. That's all that changed. That's it. Nothing else changed. And Christian won a couple TNT titles down the road. But that didn't really lead much to anywhere. It was a weird gimmick, and it's just like, we'll see where this goes. I like all these teams because House of Black is awesome and Bang Bang Gang is great. So, and I think the Patriarchy, in terms of from a pure wrestling perspective, is great as an act. It's kind of a tired premise. So then we get a hologram video package. Hologram's actually been pretty awesome on Collision. I don't regularly tune into Collision as I've kind of mocked the viewership, but he's a lot of fun. And I hope he becomes a regular staple on their shows because he's very entertaining, does a lot of things in the ring that you don't see. So then we go from that. Camille makes her entrance to Mercedes Monet's entrance music. Can we get Camille some music? For God's sake, she's been signed to the company for like 6 months, just debuted on television a few weeks ago, and she's coming out to Mercedes Monet's entrance music. Because you need to get the CEO chant, and I guess Mercedes has royalties because Tony Khan bought her off for more money than WWE wanted to pay, and she's overrated. Like, look, I've liked Mercedes Moné, and I've always had a lot of respect for her as a performer. But week by week, month by month, her credibility is dying. And AEW is looking worse in signing her, and WWE is looking better in the fact that they moved off of her, and their women's division is as stacked as it is. So basically, this match was Camille versus 2 jobbers, Jasmine Howe and Clara Carter, who, for whatever reason, looked like miserable in the ring because they probably knew that they were going to get squashed. But then, like, Camille's got her back turned, and the commentators basically say, "Oh, that was a missed opportunity for them to jump in and attack her." This looked like these are 2 of the dumbest like participants in a match that you ever seen. You got this big intimidating woman who's about to kill you. Why don't you at least like attack her right off the bat, and then she would end up killing you? It's just like, man. So yeah, this was nothing. Camille just slammed people around for a little bit. She had a torture rack bomb, and pinned them both at the end. Like, this only meant about a minute and a half. So Camille wins the match. So after the match, Mercedes does her whole say hello to the CEO, say hello to the Brick House. Mercedes says not to worry about Brick Baker. The EVPs got her suspended, and they don't have to worry about her until All In. Mercedes told the crowd again that Britt wasn't there. Monet says her title shows that she's the best in AEW. Tony Schiavone then shows up on stage because he's, again, like the mouthpiece of, even though Christopher Daniels could have done this too, he's like an authority figure. So Tony Schiavone basically informs Mercedes that Tony Khan overruled the Elite and lifted the suspension of Britt Baker. And then Schiavone throws to Britt Baker via satellite to a taped promo. This was really awkward. Really awkward. Let's go via satellite to a taped promo. No, you're going live. What? So Britt's on the Titantron. She said Mercedes can't stop her. She said she follows through with things in the end, unlike Mercedes Moné, who takes her ball and goes home. That was a good line. Shout out to some of Mercedes' past trials and tribulations in WWE when she doesn't get what she wants. Baker said AEW is just a flavor of the month for Mercedes, whereas AEW is her home. Baker said she will win the TBS title and become the first woman to beat Mercedes Moné in AEW. Baker wondered how she would get her hands on Moné. Baker said she'll figure out a way in the next week, and you can trust her that because she's a doctor. Mercedes says, yeah, yours truly, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. Britt was the best part of this segment, and she wasn't even live. A live promo sucked. Again, another clunker for Mercedes. It was probably better than some of her previous ones. Still wasn't good. Stop giving her a live microphone. I would have honestly preferred if Mercedes actually competed in a match over Mariah May, because at least you're giving Mercedes something that she does really well, as opposed to giving her a microphone and cutting a promo every week. So then we get a video package hyping up Swerve Strickland and Bryan Danielson. This sets up the main event. Excalibur then shows Claudio winning a three-way on Collision to earn a Continental Championship match. So I guess Okada and Claudio are going to go face-to-face on Dynamite next week. It hasn't been revealed when this match will happen. I'm assuming either all in or all out. Either way, it's going to be a banger. Claudio is fantastic. Okada, even at 20%, and he's kind of been just like, going through the motions for most of his AEW run. Even Okada at like 15-20% is fine. But again, this was built up as signing the best wrestler in the world, and Okada just doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He's cashing a paycheck and just showing up and just joking around with the boys. Like, that's really what this is. And then we get the main event. Bryan Danielson versus Jeff Jarrett in an Anything Goes match. Ricky Steamboat, special guest commentator. They worked their butts off, and I got to give Jeff Jarrett a bunch of credit. For a man getting up there in age, this guy can still sell. He can still work. This was a fun match. It starts, Jarrett gets the upper hand on Bryan before the bell even rings. He hits him in the back with the guitar during Bryan's entrance. There were some low blows in this match. But then getting down the stretch of the match, Jarrett takes Danielson down, applies the figure four. Danielson grabs a chair and slams it over Jeff Jarrett's knees to break the hold. I've never seen that to break up a hold. That was cool. Jeff Jarrett hit a stroke on the chair for a near fall. It didn't look good, but he tried. Jarrett puts Danielson in a sharpshooter. Okay, that's a nice little thing tying in the Hart family. Danielson's able to counter that into a lapel lock, but Jarrett escapes. Danielson and Jarrett are trading punches. Danielson avoids another stroke and shoves the chair into Jarrett. He shoves Jarrett into a corner where the chair was wedged. Bryan Danielson then hits a chair-assisted Busaiku knee for the 3 count. Holy crap. That was a gnarly looking spot, and Jarrett was bleeding pretty bad from the ear after that. That looked nasty. But yeah, this is a banger. Bryan Danielson wins this in 16 minutes. I get why they did this match. It's like to show that Danielson's ready for anything. But at the same time, it's like you're wrestling almost on borrowed time. And you got to be careful with how you handle Bryan Danielson down the stretch run here, because he's going to want to go balls to the wall in that big stadium, and I think you want him at max energy and max capacity. So I think that might be the only match that he works in the build to this feud with this match with Swerve Strickland in the main event. So after the match, Karen Jarrett, Jay Lethal, and Sanjay Dutt come out to check on Jeff. Wheeler Yuta and Ricky Steamboat come to check on Danielson. Jarrett, as I said, has a lot of blood coming down his blood coming down his jawline after taking that nasty spot to end the match. Danielson applauds Jarrett. Steamboat raises both their arms. Danielson and Jarrett shake hands and hug, and out comes Swerve Strickland. Swerve spoke as he walked his way down the ramp. Swerve said he just saw 3 TBS legends in Jarrett, Steamboat, and himself. Swerve said they are 3 men who have... So he didn't mention Bryan Danielson right off the bat, which is okay. A little bit of shade there. Swerve said they are the 3 men who have defined pro wrestling on the network. Swerve entered the ring, and he said Bryan Danielson's one of the greatest of all time. He said why it will be great for him and a huge honor when he retires him at Wembley Stadium and Daniel's legacy becomes his. Swerve said he wouldn't hesitate to deliver the kill shot. This was kind of like the whole theme of the build with Ospreay. Swerve asked Danielson how he was doing. He said, if that's what Jarrett did, then imagine what I can do to you. Swerve said he needed a little warm-up, and he proposed a match with Wheeler Yuta. He needed a warm-up match, and then he reveals Wheeler Yuta. Swerve told Danielson that he wanted him to have a front row seat while he shows him why he's the most dangerous man in AEW. Swerve then tossed the mic at Yuta's chest and let it drop. Holds up his title belt that goes face-to-face with Danielson, and that's the show. What a wet fart of an ending this was. It should be Jon Moxley. Not to disrespect Wheeler Yuta, and I understand why it's not Jon Moxley because he has been so well protected, but if you really want to hammer home the point that Swerve is a killer, what better match to have than have him go over Jon Moxley? I understand John's on vacation, and he had the whole run with the New Japan title. Jon Moxley is arguably the ace of AEW. No matter how you feel about him, how you feel about him bleeding profusely all over the place, Wheeler Yuta should, honest to God, get squashed and not have a competitive match with Swerve. Wheeler Yuta lost his pure championship. He was off television for 6 months. He doesn't have much of an aura or a connection with the crowd. He's the least significant member of his own group, the Blackpool Combat Club, that has felt insignificant for a really long time. So if you're going to frame this as like, Swerve's going to beat up effectively one of Bryan's adopted sons in Wheeler Yuta because he's taken Wheeler under his wing, I can maybe get behind that, but you can't have this be the same type of match as Bryan Danielson, Jeff Jarrett, and go 16 minutes in a competitive match. Like, again, it should be Jon Moxley. I know why it's not happening, but there's justification where you could potentially run some sort of non-finish to protect both guys. If you wanted to really make a statement and present Swerve like this face of AEW as he says he is, you got to face the guy. And the guy in AEW from day one practically is Jon Moxley. That's the way it's always been. He has been one of the big head honchos and the big names that this company has carried forward in the 5 years of its existence. And here's the thing: like, I understand that a lot of people don't like Jon Moxley's style, but the one thing you can't argue is his identification and association with AEW, and he's like one of the faces of this brand. And so that's a huge missed opportunity, especially to build up something in this feud, considering John's real ties with Bryan Danielson and how their story has been told over the last 3 years, between the match at Revolution and then building the Blackpool Combat Club and going through all these trials and tribulations and having multiple matches against each other for the world title. It feels like a missed opportunity. So, this show was kind of there. And for a show that follows a Monday Night Raw that was one of the best Monday Night Raws that I've seen, and then you compound it with the fact that we are now, 18 days away from All In Wembley Stadium, you've got to do better than that. There's a couple decent things on this show that I liked, but then a lot of these segments just did nothing to advance. It didn't help any of these stories get any further than they already were. And the wet fart of an ending that you saw with Wheeler Yuta facing the world champion next week, that's just not going to cut it, man. Like, you've got to do better. And again, Warner Brothers Discovery, we are still waiting on a television deal. Tony Khan has since said they're fine. Until that gets announced, what am I supposed to believe? And then when you put shows out like this that are just like seat fillers and just like like just basic like garnish and condiments and just thrown together shit for the sake of like I don't think Osprey and Osprey and MJF is any further along than it was initially. Yeah, Kyle Fletcher got involved, but it's like we knew that that was going to happen. And it was the same MJF match that I've seen from him as a heel for the last 5 years. It's nothing different. Bryan Danielson, Jeff Jarrett. Okay, Bryan showed a killer instinct. But what advanced the feud? Like, Swerve's been saying the same shit for the last couple of weeks. He's basically been saying, yeah, I'm taking Bryan's legacy. Like, we know Bryan's career is on the line. But then you compound that with Swerve saying, yeah, you know, I want a warm-up match. So I'm going to face the worst guy in your group. Nothing says like good booking like that and putting your world championship in a match. And I like Wheeler Yuta, but again, he has been out for a long period of time. There's not nearly enough people that give a crap about him. He lost his championship that he held in Ring of Honor. And again, like I said, it was right there for you. Even Claudio, I understand that Claudio's got other stuff going on with Okada. Even Claudio would have been a better option. But the problem is, Claudio, out of the gate, you already had him face Swerve for the world title. Out of nowhere, like in his first week as champion. So Claudio's not available either. It was right there for you to have Jon Moxley in a closing angle for him to come out and potentially confront Swerve Strickland to potentially set up whatever this is going to be. And that would have been, honestly, a really good closing angle, better than what this was. So that's AEW Dynamite. I'll be back later in the week. Tribal Chief is back on Friday, people. Get hyped. The Tribal Chief, the OTC, the original Tribal Chief, is back in WWE. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see what goes on SmackDown. We're hoping to have a mailbag this week. I've done a lot of work this week, so we'll see where we're at. But I'll talk to you guys in a little bit. Bye-bye.